Good morning and afternoon, everybody. We'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, 2021 Employment Law Review and a 2022 Forecast. As you all may know, my name is Mac Smith. I'm with 501c Services. We're a 100% employee-owned company that provides full-service unemployment outsourcing programs and other services to more than 3,000 nonprofits. Some of our programs are the 501c Agencies Trust and 501c HR Services. Incidentally, next year will be our 40th year, so we are very excited about that and hope to be providing some fun things to do over the next 12 months. Many of you all with us today are already working with us, and we really appreciate you being here with us. I'm going to go over some quick housekeeping before I hand the program over to Bruce. As he and I were discussing earlier, a copy of the slide deck will be provided to everybody following the program, so you don't have to worry about that. We will get that to you. Also, Bruce is going to take questions as he goes. Between the two of us, we will try to get most of your questions answered during the program, and of course, Bruce is usually available afterwards for some questions if you have further questions. Also, today's program is available for HR credit through HRCI and SHRM. You all know the drill. At the conclusion of the program, a survey will pop up. Just fill it out for me. Let me know which credit you need, and I will get those to you. If you need to hop off the call and go have lunch or to a meeting, you will also get that survey in a follow-up email later today, so you can fill it out then. And that's about it. So without any further ado, Bruce is one of our friends from Littler, and he has for 2 years in a row presented this program for us, talking about what we just went through over the past year and what we might expect next year. How are you doing this morning, Bruce?
Doing great. Thanks, Mac. Great to be here. Ready to go. I'm ready to go.
Take it away, man.
All right, sure thing. Well, hello, my friends. It's good to be together again. We're going to talk about a number of different topics with a sort of overview of what's really been going on in employment law this year, 2021. Of course, a very sort of curious and puzzling year for all of us, including a lot of us have been working from home. You may notice, looks like I'm in an office today, and I am, but usually I've been working at home recently, as many of you have, I'm sure. And people have wandered around from state to state, city to city. The employment law implications of those are pretty vast and troubling. We'll take a look at COVID, particularly with regard to vaccination and mandatory vaccination policies, what's new in discrimination, what's new in leaves of absence, and what's around the corner for 2022. We have a lot of information to cover, and it's not possible to talk about everything, but we'll give you a pretty comprehensive review. We have more words on some of these slides than usual, and that's okay, because you're going to get a copy of the slides and you can refer to them later on, but I'm not necessarily going to read you every word on every slide. And finally, my favorite, this seminar does not substitute for the advice of counsel. I don't want to hear you saying at your deposition, well, Bruce Sarchet said at this webinar. No, no, no. If you have an employment law issue, call an employment law attorney. So let's take a look at work from home, and it really is a pretty significant trend. I mean, when the pandemic first hit in 2020, March, April, the Gallup organization did a poll, and they found like 70% of US workers were always or sometimes working from home. And that's stepped down to 50, and now it's at about 35% of American workers always or sometimes working from home. And this does present employment law challenges. So rather than just talk about employment laws, I think it would be more beneficial to take a look at a sort of a story together and see what this real world, it's based on real world events, and see what the employment law implications of that are. So I've got 3 video clips. They sort of run in sequence. It's a manager and an employee, and they're meeting like many of us do and like we are right now over the internet on Zoom. So let's take a look at the first clip here. And if the technology will work. We'll all be seeing this shortly.
Good morning, Jamie. Thanks for calling in. How's everything going?
Good morning, boss. Thanks for setting all of this up. Things are good. I can't believe it's been over a year since I've been to the office. What's it like to be back?
Oh, it's okay. Pretty quiet, as you can imagine. A few people have started to come in, but it's just not the same.
You know, I never thought that I would say this, but it's actually been pretty great to work from home. I'm more productive than ever. That part's going way better than I expected. I really do miss seeing everyone in person, though.
We miss seeing you too. These video calls just aren't the same.
And you know, one thing I don't miss, the Los Angeles traffic. Sitting on the 405 for an hour or more every day. Oh, good riddance.
Oh, I know it. That's why I'm so glad that we're able to offer you and everyone else on the team this new permanent flexible work arrangement. You probably saw the memo. There's full-time back, full-time home, and hybrid,
Yeah, right.
where
It's
you
really
can come
good,
in
Billy.
1 or 2 days a week.
Yeah. No, wait, right there. See that? Remember what your teacher said, I before eat, except after see. Yeah, I know it's weird, but that's the rule. Weird.
Jamie, is this still a good time?
Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Billy just had a question about school. No, honey, your teacher can't hear you. You have to unmute, remember? There you go. I apologize. Sorry about that. Where were we?
Your options.
Right, my options. You know, I considered hybrid, but I think that I'm going to stick with full-time at home for now. I mean, with Billy home from school, I think the hybrid model would just be too confusing for us. Maybe in a few months, I want to give hybrid a try.
Okay, sounds good. We'll miss you, but I totally understand. Like it said in the memo, there may be times when we will need you to come into the office. It won't be too often, but we think it's important for everyone to stay connected.
Totally understand. No problem.
Also, the same rules apply as if you were in the office. You need to record your time, no unauthorized overtime, all of it, just like if you were here.
Of course.
Great. Then let's plan on checking in every few weeks or so just to see how things are going.
Sounds good, boss. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
My friends, I wish we were all in the same room and I could just ask you the question, what did you see there? Did anybody see anything? Did anybody hear anything? And the first thing that you should say is, he said he was in Los Angeles, California. Excuse me, he said he was in Los Angeles. Remember where Los Angeles is. Los Angeles is in California. And California is the craziest place. This is where I live. I love it here. But in terms of running a business and complying with employment laws, good luck. And what he said about the 405 is right. There's actually a joke. I think James would appreciate this because I think he has a bit of a sense of humor. Do you know why they call it the 405 freeway? Well, they call it that because it takes 405 hours to get anywhere on it. Sorry. The other thing I saw was she mentioned the word at the very end, overtime. So this worker working from home is non-exempt. They have to punch a time clock, and yet we have them working from home. This will present some really big challenges. It's one thing if you're an exempt employee and you're just paid to get the job done, right? So you turn and you help Billy with his homework. Okay, that's no big deal because you still have to get the job done. But if you're an exempt employee, you know, from 8 a.m. to 10, you're supposed to be at work, and then you take a 15-minute break, and then from 10:15 to 12, you're supposed to be at work again. So these interruptions present some questions, don't they, if you are a non-exempt employee? So it's not that great. Where is the employee working? Well, they're working in California, as I mentioned, and apparently there's nothing in writing. Nothing's been signed. It's all just verbal. So that's going to be a big problem. And then, as I mentioned, she brings up that magic word overtime. This is a non-exempt employee. So when exactly is the work time here? And finally, he's working from home. So is there going to be an expense reimbursement question? What about all those interruptions? Do we have to pay him for that? He's turning and he's helping his son with his schoolwork, and then he comes back to work. he's constantly being interrupted. We can assume this happens on a regular basis. The basic rule is that if you were in the office and you had the same sort of thing and you've got short interruptions, those are really going to be considered to be rest breaks, little ones here and there, but treated as hours worked. You can't have people clocking in, clocking out, clocking in, clocking out all the time. What about this idea though? Multiple interruptions, can we add those up? A minute here, a minute there, a minute there, a minute there, a minute there. Now we've got 10 minutes. That's your break. Well, no, you can't really aggregate short breaks and make them into a constructive rest period or a constructive meal period. So how do we deal with this problem for exempt employees? Well, one approach is to keep everybody on a real regular schedule, just like perhaps you would if they were in the office, and just treat the entire period as compensable and don't worry about interruptions. Just don't, yeah, they're going to have interruptions. They're going to do their laundry. They're going to go to the door and look out when there's a dog barking next door or a truck comes and makes a noise. They're going to do a zillion different things during the workday. Maybe they've got the crock pot going in the oven and they go down and give it a stir and they come back. And the crock pot working in the kitchen, excuse me. If you put a crock pot in the oven, then you've got other things you need to be worrying about. So this approach is one I think that a lot of businesses have adopted. And frankly, when the shelter-in-place orders came around and Littler Mendelson, my law firm, went to home, we sent the secretaries home as well. And I think this is pretty much the approach we took, is expect them to get the work done and didn't really pull our hairs out about the interruptions. Another approach is that if perhaps these are going to be longer, the classic example is getting the kid ready for school. It's more than just a quick, hey, this is how you spell cactus and then back to work. So maybe you have a work period early and then a break early, like a substantial break, like 1 hour, and then you work more chunks throughout the day. That's another approach that could work. Another approach is this idea of core hours, that if you're teleworking, everybody has to be available from blank to blank and blank to blank, or just one time period, so that we know that if I need to schedule a call with you, you're there focused and working from 10 to 12. You're there focused and working from 1 to 3. That's when we have our meetings, that's when we have our calls, et cetera, et cetera. And then you've got 4 other hours. You just fill in the gaps how you want to. Watch out though, because there's something in employment law, wage and hour law, called split shift premiums and spread of hours laws, where you have to pay extra sometimes if you break up a work day into 2 different segments. Sometimes under the Fair Labor Standards Act, if you're in a state that doesn't have independent wage and hour law, or that follows the Fair Labor Standards Act, it's okay for you just to record total hours worked, and some states do require the recording of start and stop, so you have to watch out for that. So certainly there are a number of issues presented here. Would all those issues be presented though if our employee, Jamie, was exempt? Well, no, again, Jamie would then be paid to get the job done, and that's what we would be focusing on. So I think sort of our approach number 1 is, if you've got workers from home and you want to just take the path of least resistance, you almost treat them like they are exempt. Focus on getting the job done and don't agonize over all of these interruptions. Now, we're going to show the second video, and I want you to think back to the first video and visualize the supervisor, visualize the employee, all right? And now let's take a look. It's a little later on in the shelter in place, and let's see if you can see what's changed. And after that, your brain clicks to that, then pay attention to what they're saying here and see if you can spot some of the employment law issues that come up now.
Good morning, Jamie.
Oh, hey, Brandy, good morning.
So I just wanted to check in and see how the first month of official full-time at home is going.
It's great. The last year's been rough, but, making it official, I really felt like I could take back some control.
Oh, sorry. That's what happens when you click on the question box when the video's playing.
Settle in, get myself organized.
Yeah, it looks like you moved out of the kitchen.
Yeah. Once I knew this was going to be my new normal, I converted the spare room. I got a desk, set up a printer. Everything's all in one place. I got this sweet new webcam. I even upgraded my internet. It's like I was back in my old office, but the commute's way better.
Yeah, I'm sure. Things are changing here at the office too. The flexible work options are so popular. We never have more than a third of our team in the office. So we decided to consolidate our space a bit.
Oh, wow. Already.
Yeah, we're giving up our lease on the third floor. I'm saving a ton of money.
But the third floor, that's where my office is.
That's where your office was. We are converting the East Conference Room on the second floor to a shared workspace for when you actually need to come in. It's great. Those who are here full-time will have their cubes down on the first floor, and those who are hybrid will switch to a hoteling model and alternate days in their cube with other team members.
But what if I decide that I want to come back to the office? I change my mind.
I thought you were happy working from home. I mean, it's gotten so popular that we're even posting new positions to do work from home.
Oh, well, that's great. I am happy working from home. I mean, after all, I just get the new sweet setup organized. And I do have to say, I'm not complaining about not having that office dress code.
And don't forget the commute.
Oh, no, I'm saving money on gas, parking, but mostly just having all that time back is great.
Yeah, right. Time. Yes. Speaking of time, I have noticed that I've been having a hard time reaching you during the day, and other times you've been sending me emails at all sorts of hours. I was wondering if maybe.
Boss, this is not really a good time. I'm sorry, there's a thing that I need to take care of. Can we set up a time to chat tomorrow, like 2 o'clock, good? Great. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, I brings a smile to my face, and this is not the first time I've seen this, my friend. I like his, he's in his shirt. He's not, he's not shaving anymore. That's nice. I hope he's still taking the job seriously. He's still getting interruptions, and she says he's not available when she tries to call him, and she's getting emails at all times of day. So we've got other concerns that are popping up here, don't we? Before we get to those, so let's see here. We got a question. Bruce, what is your take on exempt employee on a hybrid, asking for the company to provide a workstation, desk and chair for working from home? That's a great question. We're going to put it on hold till segment number 3. We're getting there. We're getting there. In fact, we'll get there right now because this is his sweet new setup, right? So what did he get? Well, he got a desk. What else did he get? A chair. He didn't have that in the first scene. What's that thing? I can't exactly tell what that is supposed to be, but it's it's something. Maybe it's the new internet. He said he upgraded the internet. He got a printer. He got a whiteboard. That's sweet, and a calendar and paper, right? Oh, and pencils and a stapler. I see a stapler. The new Air pods there. He got that sweet webcam, he said. And but here, let's talk about things that he already had. These are all new things previously, all of these things, but he already had electricity coming in. And there it is, the light and the plug, right? And HVAC, and he was already paying rent or a mortgage on the space. So he got all this new stuff, but he's also got the old stuff. So who pays? Who pays for all of this stuff? Well, we're having a 1-hour webinar today on laws, employment laws, and we could have a 1-hour webinar just on this question. And the question of expense reimbursement is state specific, and it's pretty grueling to work through. If I gave you the option of saying, let's spend 1 hour talking about expense reimbursement law in 50 states, or you can hit yourself in the head with a hammer. I think a lot of you would probably say, give me the hammer. It's just not that great of a thing, but you need to be focused in on this if you've got people working from home, because this is real, my friends. People are bringing lawsuits asking for reimbursement, and the rules apply regardless of exempt or non-exempt status. Very different rules with regard to how do you pay people and the breaks and the meal breaks and all that if you're non-exempt. The same rules for all categories of employees on expense reimbursement. Now, he said he's saving money. He's not parking. He's not commuting. Can we get an offset, right? He's bought a printer, but he's not having to put gas in the car. No offset. Sorry, that doesn't get to balance out. And is this a real thing? Yeah, it's a real thing. This is a social media advertisement that's on the internet. We pulled it out and we blacked out the name of the employer. But basically, the advertisement is saying, hey, if you're paying for utilities and rent, we can get you in a wage and hour class action to try to get some of that back. Sue your employer for expense reimbursement. And we've seen these kind of lawsuits in California and elsewhere. So this kind of gets to the question that was asked and that I read to you earlier. Is the expense necessary? If you say to an employee, you have an office and the office is downtown, or the office is in the suburb or the business complex or wherever it is, and we have a desk and a chair and a phone and a computer there for you, then if they want to work from home, if they choose to work from home, that expense really isn't necessary because they could just come into the office. So if you make participation at the work at home optional and you make the necessary equipment available at the office, then that's sort of a bright line where you don't have to reimburse. Many businesses today don't meet this bright line test though, so it's a little bit blurrier. So make it clear whether or not this is a voluntary or involuntary arrangement. Identify the equipment. Make sure people get prior approval, because you can spend, office chairs are like weddings, right? You can almost spend as much as you want to on an office chair, or you can get something more reasonable, and create some sort of systems really for monitoring and looking at this. Also, you need to think, what's their workstation like at home? Do they have a good place to sit? Is it ergonomic? Are you going to get workers' comp claim from aggravating carpal tunnel, et cetera, based on inappropriate work setups? All right, let's see where the story goes now. This is our final video, but let's take a look at what's going on now. You know what? Also, before we get to this, it seems to me the question of, he's saying, oh, you took away my office and you're going to this model where I can come in and use a cubicle, but I have to share it. Businesses have been doing this. It's a real thing, this hoteling model. It is a way to save money. There are challenges that are associated with it. You want to make sure that if you're in that model, you've got plenty of the cleaning supplies on hand and you're ready to do that and have the surfaces wiped down. Another thing I've seen a lot more that you didn't used to see in office environments is lockers. We're seeing lockers added to offices where this hoteling model is, so that if someone's got, the picture of their grandkids and they want to put it up in the cube with them to help them while they're doing their work, then they can store it in the locker, and they come in and they get their personal stuff out of the locker, put it in the cube and put it back in. Then that raises a whole host of other issues with regard to privacy and searching and the right to take a look into lockers that maybe weren't faced before in the sort of white collar office environment. It's more of a manufacturing plant, blue collar kind of thing, but that's the reality that we're seeing develop. And so new labor and employment law issues coming up from that as well. All right, let's take a look at the last video, see how things are going now.
Hey, Brandy.
Hey, Jamie. Is this still a good time?
Oh, you bet. What's up?
I wanted to chat with you about that report you sent me last week.
Oh, yeah. Was it okay?
It was amazing.
Oh, you.
Here's the thing, though. You sent it to me at 10 o'clock at night. I had called you that morning to check on the status, but you didn't answer.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm so sorry about that. Last week was kind of crazy at home. Billy was having trouble with his online school, and I was bouncing back and forth all day. Now, I saw that you were trying to call me, but I was knee deep in Billy's report on the Jurassic period. I couldn't get away. I didn't want to miss the deadline, so I finished up the report after Billy went to bed. It was no problem, really.
No, I understand, and I appreciate the extra effort. Things are crazy, and I'm glad you were able to help Billy and still get the report done. But I still need to make sure you're following all the work rules, like no unauthorized overtime. I noticed on the day you sent me the report, your timesheet says 8 to 5 with a meal break from noon to 1.
Oh, really, it's no problem. I figured it would be okay. Since I was distracted, I didn't really give you a full day of work. So when I look back after I finished the report, I just figured my time added up to 8 hours. So I just put it down the usual way.
Right, the usual way. That's another thing I noticed. You always put 8 to 12 and 1 to 5. Are you really working like that, even from home?
Well, look, I'm getting my work done, aren't I? I put in my 8 hours. It's just different. Working from home, between Billy's school and trying to manage things at home and get my work done, I'm doing my best. What am I supposed to do? Clock out every time I go to switch out a load of laundry?
No, I'm not saying any of that. Your work is incredible. In fact, your productivity has increased since we adopted
Oh, I did it again, sorry.
the flex work option. I'm just worried about you when I see you sending me emails at 10 o'clock at night.
No, it's fine. I'm sorry for getting defensive. Just trying to juggle work and everything else at the same time can be overwhelming. It was easier when I was in the office and able to focus on one thing at a time. Things are just different now.
I know what you mean. I used to actually be a boss, a mentor. Now I spend most of my time chasing people down for their timesheets and helping them with their computers, filling out paperwork about who's working where, when. I used to love the coaching, but now who has the time?
Hey, look, I know you're trying. I don't want to let you down, and I want to make this work. So sometimes I need to rearrange things. That's all.
How so?
Well, like, for example, I really don't need an hour for lunch. I mean, my kitchen's right there. So instead of taking an hour for lunch and, just sitting around the house, sometimes I'll go and run errands. I'll go to the grocery store and do stuff like that. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's a little less, sometimes a little more. I figure it all averages out. And while I'm out, that's also when I go to the post office to mail the daily work packet back to the office. 2 birds, 1 stone, how kind of blends together.
I get it. I really do. Look, just do your best to record your time as accurately as possible. And please, no more 10 p.m. emails. If you need us to adjust your schedule, just let me know.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Oh, that reminds me, your daily work packet. It looks like I'm still missing one of the telework forms that you need to sign and send back in.
Which one?
The one about the equipment use authorization, that since you're using the laptop away from the office, you're responsible if you break it, and if you don't return it at the end of your employment, we can deduct it from your final paycheck.
Ah, geez, I'm not planning on breaking the precious laptop or quitting. Seems a bit like overkill.
Look, I know it'll never be an issue, and all the paperwork is annoying, but so is me having to chase down everyone for all the missing forms. Just sign it and send it in this week.
You got it, boss.
All right. Don't forget that next Tuesday, we're starting our monthly team luncheon at the office. It'll be good to see you there.
Sounds good. I'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.
Okay, that one was really loaded up with a lot of stuff. We don't have time together to go through all of the issues that were there, but he sort of got this approach. Look, it all balances out. I take breaks, it adds up to 8. I go out and combine my work errands with my personal errands, it all balances out. Sadly, it doesn't work that way, and we've got to be a little bit more precise. The supervisor knew he was emailing at 10 o'clock. Does that create overtime? Suffer or permit is the standard. There is guidance from the Department of Labor about how you can comply with these obligations. Mixing the work and personal time, is that reimbursable now? The mileage, etc. He missed his meal in California. That would cause a penalty to be paid. What about if he comes back to the office for this meeting? Are we going to have to pay his commute now when he drives to the office, even though we never paid his commute time before? And on and on and on. One final suggestion for dealing with all of this is one workplace per day. Don't mix it up where they work from home part of the day and then come into the office for another part. That just leads to a lot of complications. And have a telework toolkit. We at Littler have such a thing. If you're interested, we can get it to you. It's got all the forms and paperwork that you're going to need. All right, so let's move on from that to the wandering worker. And Wanda now is working for a company in A, and she's exempt under the FLSA, but she's paid by the hour, and there's a shelter-in-place order. And Wanda now moves from A to state B, but doesn't tell her company. So what's going on? State B has different laws with regard to how you classify people. So she was exempt. Maybe now she's not going to be exempt. So when employees move from one state to another, we immediately have questions about how are we going to treat them for wage and hour law purposes. And the general rule, my friend, is the state where the employee is working is the state employment laws that are going to be applied. But wait a second, she was sneaky. She went off in the middle of the night and didn't tell anybody. Can we say, oh no, we're not going to do this because you didn't tell us? Sorry, the answer is no. If your employees move without you knowing, then you're going to have to comply with the state laws where they work, even if you didn't know about it. Here's another issue. Different cities have different laws with regard to sick leave. And if you've got, I mean, we talked about wage and hour concerns. Here's number 2, leave of absence laws. Leaves of absence laws, terribly complicated today, and it's not getting any easier. So if you go to a city that has a paid sick leave law, and many US cities now do, but many don't, then you're going to have to worry about complying with that as well. So we got wage and hour, we got leave of absence. Oh, here's another one. Income taxes. Income taxes. The state income tax laws are different. Texas doesn't have a state income tax. California does. So if you're moving from one place to the other, how do you grapple with that? How do you figure that out? Who's going to pay it? Many states have a half a year rule where you have to work there 183 days or half a year. But others don't. Others don't. We do have employment tax lawyers here. I'm not one of them, but we do have some experts in this area if you have further questions. Here's another one, payroll deduction leave benefits. Not all leave benefits. A couple slides ago, we talked about leaves of absence. Those are just provided by the employer. Some of them are now coming to where you actually have to do a payroll deduction to fund the leave. If someone moves from one place to another and they move to a place where there's supposed to be these payroll deductions, you could end up self-insuring for that if you don't take care of that. So a whole host of issues we saw just from an employee working at home. They get even more complicated if the employee moves to another state, another city, another country. We've had questions about that. What about to another planet? Well, we're not quite there yet. Maybe your granddaughter's granddaughter will have to grapple with the interplanetary employment laws, but fortunately we don't have that complexity quite yet. So can you do something about it? Yeah, you need to know where your employees are. If you've got them working from home, you can ask, where are you working every day? And you can enforce, you can promulgate and enforce a policy requiring that employees let you know about their whereabouts. And you can say you can't move without permission. Because if you've got a business in, let's say, a nice state like North Dakota or Texas, you may not want your employees moving to California to work for you. You may just say, it's too complicated. There's too many crazy laws out there in the Golden State. And you really do have the right to say, no, you can't move to California and work. We're not set up to do business there. That's something that you as an employer can say. But it's not all bad. Remember our hypothetical video there where the supervisor said that we're even advertising positions, new hires, you can work 100% from home. So this idea of flexibility is something that is attractive to many employees, and it can be used by businesses as a recruiting tool. The focus on where can you work as opposed to where can't you work is something you might consider. Now, could you say we're flexible, but you can't work in California? Yeah. Could you say we're flexible, but you can't work in Colorado? Yeah. And people say, Colorado, what's wrong with Colorado? Colorado has this interesting wage transparency law that's really one of a kind in the country, because it applies to all positions. Once you're in Colorado, then you basically have to comply with this law across state lines. It's sort of an extraterritorial application of state law, if you would. So it gets pretty challenging there. Remember, the general rule is that the law where the employee is working, the law of the state where the employee is working, is generally the law that will apply. Two exceptions, the Colorado exception I just mentioned. The second is some leave of absence laws require accrual of employees based on where the sort of home office or the city of origin is. So you need to be careful about that as well. So those are the issues that we've been facing with work at home and remote work and wandering workers, real employment law issues for 2021. And a lot of the time that we at my firm, Littler, have spent counseling businesses this year has been grappling with these issues. We've also spent a lot of time this year dealing with, and that's all related to COVID. We wouldn't be having this discussion at this level if it wasn't for the pandemic and the shelter in place orders and the migration from office and workplace to work at home. We also have been advising businesses with regard to COVID issues generally, maintaining a safe workplace, and then with regard to mandatory vaccinations as well. Travel with me back exactly 1 year, December 8th, 2020, right? Today's December 8th, 2021. For those of you like me that can't seem to remember what date it is anymore, it's December 8th. Well, last year on this day, hey, look at that. Bruce Sarchet gave a webinar to 501c services. It's the 1 year anniversary. So happy birthday or happy anniversary. It's also the anniversary of the very first COVID-19 vaccination in the world. A pretty miraculous turnaround when you think that it was December 31st, 2019, less than a year prior to this, that Chinese health officials informed the WHO and the world of this mysterious pneumonia-like disease that had inflicted 41 patients. The world just went crazy with this after that. We were sheltered in place by March 15th, and by December 8th, we had the first vaccine administered in the United Kingdom. A lot of people got vaccinated since. The first US vaccine was December 20th, 2020, and we saw famous people getting vaccinated. Remember who that guy was? Yeah, he got it. He got it on air. And, pretty much everybody was getting the vaccine. Heck, even the king was getting well, I'm sort of just having some fun there. So we come now to May 13th, and the CDC comes out with this announcement. If you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. It was just like, woohoo, hooray, I'm free, I got the vaccine. I don't need to wear the mask anymore. Yes, that's so great. Well, that lasted 10 weeks or so, because on July 27th, the CDC changed their mind and said in areas of substantial or high transmission, even if you're vaccinated, you still need to wear a mask. So we got the masks taken off, and then we got to put them back on, but only in the areas of substantial or high transmission, which are the red areas. So on June 28th, we see not that many areas of substantial or high transmission. Here's the problem, though. By July, it looked like this, and everything's red by September. So basically, the CDC was saying by September, remember in May, they said no mask. In September's like, okay, everyone needs to wear a mask indoors, vaccinated or not. Did you hear that, America? If you're indoors, you're supposed to still wear a mask. I don't know. I hope they heard me. So here's the conversation that might take place at some workplaces, and this leads to some difficult workplace situations. One employee says to the other, "Hey man, I only have to wear this stupid mask because you aren't getting the vaccine," and the other employee says, "Hey man, I don't want to get the vaccine. It's none of your beeswax what I choose to put or not put into my body." And the conflict there between the two sides has happened all over the United States. It's all over the media, and it's in your workplaces. It's in your workplaces as well. How do you deal with this? Well, I think you deal with it by focusing on work. It's like, let's focus on work. We're doing everything we can to have a safe workplace. Let's all just focus on work. If you have discussion about the vaccination status, that's something that's going to distract us from our mission. This is a difficult thing for frontline supervisors to do, but I think you need to train them, you need to coach them, you need to work with them, and you need to get that message across. All right, so going back to July, we actually did a survey of what we were giving advice to clients about, and the top two things which were said on Zoom calls, of course, number one, you're on mute, and number two, we are implementing a mandatory vaccination policy. A lot of businesses ran to this in the summertime. And I think we're currently at about 35% of workplaces. So a number of high profile companies joined the club in the summertime. And basically we developed three options. You could just require it. You could phase it in. So in other words, we had some clients that said, all right, everyone's going to have to get the vaccination by January 1st, 2022. But if you're a new hire, you have to have it before you come on board. So sort of a two-tiered approach, and that allows you to sort of phase it in. I think that was an approach that worked. And then vaccinated or test, that was the soft landing option. But remember this, you had to give exceptions for medical reasons or based on sincerely held religious beliefs. And an interesting thing happened over the summer when people realized, oh, I can say I have a sincerely held religious belief against getting the vaccine and I don't have to get a shot. A lot of people have used that, and businesses have had to grapple with it. We have many employees by August saying, "Hey, we have a sincerely held religious belief." How do you respond to that? Well, most businesses responded with a form. Fill out a form and tell us about your reasons. And sometimes we had heard this: I'm a pro-life Catholic, or the COVID vaccine contains aborted fetal tissue, and you probably didn't think, oh, I'm going to business school or HR school because I want to engage in discussions with people about aborted fetal tissue. But here we are. You have to engage in those discussions. So here's what the EEOC, the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, says is the test. You have to ask, is it religious, is it sincerely held, and can you provide an accommodation? So that number two is difficult because you have to look your employee in the eye and say, do you really believe this way? Or are you lying to me? You're not sincere, you're making it up. That's not a conversation that most people want to have with their employees, but it's sort of required. And so you're allowed to ask more questions here, like, have you had other vaccinations? Do you take other drugs? And so you get to do a little investigation. It's difficult. In September, the federal government finally comes out and says, we're going to develop an OSHA standard. They did so on November 4th, 490 pages. Also on November 4th, they issued these FAQs, which are very helpful. But also on November 4th, the states, a number of them said, we're going to sue. And on November 12th, the lawsuit was successful and the OSHA standard was stopped. And basically now everybody's in limbo. The court's saying, hey, what's this difference between 99 employees and 100 employees? And it's a legitimate question. So OSHA has suspended activities on the ETS. Other challenges were also filed. The Sixth Circuit now has the case, and we shall see what they say about it. Meanwhile, in Louisiana, there was a stay against the Medicare, Medicaid part of the federal mandate, and that's been granted nationwide. The federal contractor mandate has been enjoined on a nationwide basis, and states have pushed back now, passing laws saying things like, if an employee says they have a sincerely held religious belief against getting the vaccine, you can't ask any other questions. You can't go into that number 2 inquiry about whether or not the belief is sincerely held. So those are all great stories. What should we do? Well, I think that the federal ETS has been stopped, but and December 6th was the big day, but that's come and gone. So a few preliminary steps: review your policy if you have one, check your state laws to make sure that you're complying there. The 100 employee threshold looks like it is possibly going to still be in effect. Let's see what's happening here. Is my screen sharing no longer working?
No, I still have you.
Okay, because I'm getting a funny blinking box up here saying that screen sharing is disabled. So paid time off is part of the ETS as well, the emergency temporary standard. And we may be still in for a future where mandatory vaccination policies are part of every American workplace. It's not here yet, but it could be coming. All right, so we've talked about work from home, we talked about wandering work, we talked about COVID vaccination, employment discrimination. We've got a number of states which are poking around in the area of employment discrimination law. We've got a few of them here. We're not going to go into a whole lot of detail on
Actually, Bruce, it looks like your slides aren't advancing anymore. Do you want to stop sharing and try again?
Yeah.
Because we're still stuck on the snowman slide.
Okay. Well, no, we've gone beyond that. Let's see here. No. You seeing anything other than the snowman?
We're just seeing you. We're not seeing the slides anymore.
Okay. Now?
Yeah, the PowerPoint presentation's back up.
Okay, and if I go up, you'll see the snowman again?
Yep, snowman.
Snowman's gone. Okay.
Snowman's gone. You're good to go. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mac. So as I said, review your policy, think about this. This could be coming. Think about how you're going to collect information. Paid time off is part of the emergency temporary standard, and paying for tests and time to take tests. This number 5 is a giant area if you go to vaccine or test, is who pays. And again, it's sort of like that expense reimbursement question, very state specific and very complex. All right, so moving away from COVID to just sort of more regular old usual run-of-the-mill employment laws. Employment discrimination, we've seen expansion of that across the states in a number of different areas. We have federal employment discrimination law, we have state, and we have more and more cities now that are in the business of regulating the workplace, and they have passed employment discrimination laws as well. Hairstyle, gender identity are being added to the lists across the countries. More hairstyle, military status, and then also don't forget the cities. During the pandemic, a lot of businesses actually just shut down, but cities and states, the legislatures remained open and passed more and more new laws. And it's not getting any easier in the area of leaves of absence. I would give you this little assignment, my friends. After our webinar today, take your employee handbook out, get it off the shelf, or look at it on the internet. Find the section that has the most words in it, the most pages. I guarantee it's leaves of absence. It takes more words to describe what happens when people aren't at work than it does when they're actually here working for us. Terribly, terribly complicated. We're seeing more paid family and medical leave programs. Remember on our Wanda, the wandering worker hypothetical, she went to a city which requires you to pay for family and medical leave, and we're seeing that expanding slowly across the country. New leave laws, we've seen them crop up here in Connecticut, voting. In New York, COVID-19 vaccine leave. In Missouri, domestic and sexual violence abuse leave, organ donor protection in Pennsylvania. We already have that in California. Military leave on a statewide basis in Oklahoma. Paid vaccination leave and kin care leave in the Silver State. Vaccination leave in Chicago, City of, and Cook County. And vaccination leave in the City of Angels as well. So if you're operating in one of these jurisdictions, indeed, these are just the new ones. Leave of absence is just very, very complicated. When I started practicing employment law over 30 years ago, we used to have this saying that leaves of absence are a matter of contract. In other words, whatever you want to do, company, you can do. And the employee comes and works there, they get the leaves, you get to write all the rules. You don't get to write all the rules anymore. You have to follow these statutes, and it's complicated across the state. There's whole businesses that are set up just to administer leaves of absence. We have what we call a highly experienced attorneys at Littler Mendelson in dealing with leave laws. Basically, that's all they do is advise clients on leaves of absence. So very, very complicated. All right, what are some of the laws we're going to see coming in January? Well, if you're in the Golden State, a new record retention law is going into place. Currently, it's 2 years, and now it's going to go to 4. And if you have a lawsuit, then you have to keep them around until the lawsuit is resolved. But what do we suggest for businesses? Well, you never know what's going to happen, so why would you throw stuff away after 4 years? Here's the hypothetical. You've got someone who said, you discriminated against me because of my age, my gender identity, my race, my religion, my disability, whatever it might be. And you say, oh no, we treat everybody the same. Everybody's subject, we're consistent, which is good. It's good to be consistent. And then the other side can say, well, prove it. You can say, well, 6 years ago, we had an employee in the same situation who was whatever, not disabled, who was under 40, who whatever it was. You need to be able to get those personnel records from 6 years ago and show that what you're doing today is consistent with what you did 6 years ago. And if you throw them away after 4 years, you're not going to be able to do that with documents. So practical suggestion is, okay, 4 years is nice, but let's just keep them. Clients sometimes ask me, can we just throw all this stuff away? There's a lot of stuff building up. I say, yeah, you can throw away anything you want to, any document you want to. Just make a copy of it first and keep that. That's good advice too. Confidentiality clauses in settlement agreements. Oh my, did we just have a little flip out there? Are we back to what we should be seeing here?
Yeah, we're back. We're back.
It's blinking on and off. I'm not seeing presentation mode anymore. It's really having an interesting time. It's not holding it there. Well, what about if I do this? Did I go to the next slide?
It's still flickering on us.
Yeah, okay, it's flickering on me too. I don't know why. Let's see my screen. Okay, stop sharing. It's flickering on me too. Sorry, my friends, bear with me. Let's try it again. Are you seeing the slide now?
Yeah, we can see the slide, absolutely.
But you're also seeing the thumbnails?
Correct. That's
fine. We're just going to go with this because we're
just don't read ahead, everybody.
Yeah, we'll read ahead if you can. If you can read that well, then that's terrific. California and other places across the country started in the wake of the Me Too movement a couple of years ago, saying, you know, these non-disclosure agreements in sex harassment cases are not good. People should be able to talk about sexual harassment in the workplace. So in California, we've got limitations on confidentiality clauses, and they've been broadened out to include all sorts of discrimination now. They used to just be about the sexual harassment, and now they're all sorts of discrimination. Are you seeing the next slide here with the number 2 on it now, Mac?
Correct, yes.
Okay, good. And other provisions as well broadened out from just sexual harassment to include unlawful acts. So if you've got a employee and you are sending them on their way, you're mutually agreeing to part ways, you need to be careful here because the laws changed in California. And this is just one example. We've got similar laws in other parts of the country. You can't prevent now in California in a severance agreement someone from talking about not just sexual harassment, but also any sort of, quote, unlawful acts in the workplace. You can still keep in confidence the amount, and you can still protect your trade secrets. There's even sample carve-out language in our law now, where you can add that right in. If you're doing this, though, you really should get outside legal help. If you've got a case, though, and you want to settle it quick, time's running out, but maybe you want to beat the clock and try to settle it today. Here's a couple of other little just sort of interesting ones to wrap up with. In Illinois, there's a new law coming into effect that if you solely rely on artificial intelligence to determine which candidates get a job interview, and this is a real thing, there are AI programs out there that help with the recruiting process, then you've got to provide data to the state about who does and who doesn't get interviewed and who does and who doesn't get hired. And then finally, in New York, a new law requiring notice to employees of all types of electronic monitoring. So there are an infinite number of new potential employment laws. We did an article that summarized all of the new laws across the country, all the new employment laws. It's sort of linked with a table, so if you're in Connecticut, you can click on Connecticut and go straight there. Take a look at that at littler.com. So as we conclude our time together, we're still facing this pandemic. It's not gone away yet. We're still dealing with it. It's a challenge. We get more and more laws. That makes it more and more challenging. Leave of absence in particular is a place where you can get tripped up. And you need to be thinking about vaccinations. How is that going to be incorporated into your business? So did we get any other questions, Mac? Looks like we got a New Jersey and Kansas question. I think we've taken care of that in segment 2. Sample religious exemption form from Littler. Yeah, we have that. We charge for it, though. It's an attorney-client privilege document. If you'd like to ask me about pricing for that and et cetera, please feel free to send me an email. And be happy to help with that. And it looks like those are our questions.
Yeah, I think you got everybody their brains spinning. So we haven't seen a lot of questions this year.
Yeah, it's you know, it is. I love my job. I love solving puzzles and helping people solve problems, and it just is getting more and more complicated. But it still is possible. You can still run a business, even in California, and comply with all these laws, but it's just getting more and more challenging. Staying current, staying up to date is really more important than ever, because it used to be that the new laws came out on January 1st. And so you could kind of just make your changes, update your handbook, December, roll out the new handbook in January, and you're good. That's not the case anymore. We've got these city councils that'll meet on, and they'll post the agenda on Monday, and by Friday, whammo, you've got a new employment law. So and that can happen on January 1st or February 18th or any day of the year. So I applaud you for participating and trying your best to keep up to date. It's really important.
All right, well, great. And if we have any other questions, we'll shoot them to Bruce. And if he has an opportunity, he'll get back to you. For those of you who need that certification credit, we'll pop that up here as soon as I shut down the screen. But Bruce, thank you again. Have a good New Year, sir.
Yes, my pleasure. Same to all of you. Bye-bye.